Hello and welcome to another episode of the Trash Talk Podcast. I'm with gentlemen today. I have Sergej. How are you doing?
Hello, I am doing fine, though I'm rather sleepy right now.
Well,
how are you doing?
I'm doing fine as well, and today we're going to be talking about the increased divisiveness, or division, I guess, in our world, polarization, and I feel like we should do something about that. Like, I'm not going to say that, like, you and I are necessarily going to fix this today, but, like, this is becoming a problem.
Everyone's living in their own bubble.
Yeah, and, I mean, I feel like there are some things that have happened are related to that weren't necessarily particularly nice. I think one of the more notable ones being the attempted insurrection in the United States of America on January the 6th, 2021. Not sure if you remember that.
Oh.
We talked about it at the time.
I think I do.
I mean, we literally talked about it like the day it happened, I think, which obviously was not a great idea because we only had limited information at the time, but it seemed like a big thing, and sure enough it was. And, obviously that, to some degree, that has to do with political radicalization very specifically, but that also kind of goes into that, right? Like, the further you go off into any given direction, the sort of more you're contributing to the polarization, because obviously radicalization, polarization is kind of the same thing, except from, like, polarization has two sides, right? But if you assume that everyone is, like, by default, somewhat close to the center, and we are, because that's kind of how the center is defined, and then people peel off one direction, peel off the other direction, then obviously that is where, like, the sort of the big division happens and the polarization. And so, again, there are some very tangible problems there, and then also just these sort of more interpersonal things, right, where people, like, some people have been drifting for the left, some people have been drifting for the right, and then if those people are, like, used to be friends, or they are related, or something like that, then the whole stereotype where, like,
becomes kind of difficult to
don't talk politics at Thanksgiving dinner. That's kind of the idea, and I mean, obviously, the question is how do we fix it, and I guess one of those things is to, like, just not talk about issues that you are so divided on in situations where maybe you don't exactly want to have a confrontation, right? So, to some level, avoidance is it's not a systemic solution, but I don't think that fixes anything. No, it doesn't fix anything. Just
hides it away.
But I think there are still situations where it's a valid solution where, again, if you're, like, at a family function with, like, people that you only see, like, once or twice a year, and, you don't necessarily want to have it end in a fight, then maybe just don't talk about controversial issues.
Yes, obviously.
Again, as I said, like, this is not a larger solution, and you mentioned it as well, right? This isn't helping it. This is not really helping the problem, but at least it's sort of mitigating the consequence of the problem. But it's okay. How do we actually fix it then?
I have honestly no clue, but when you brought up this topic, I instantly thought about, like, how to, like, systematically change it if you had the power over, like, different social media platforms, because that is where I believe it originates, or which is the driving force behind the polarization.
Yeah, so I think it's worth talking about, right? The infamous algorithms that kind of... Mm-hmm. So social media algorithms, and I think we talked about this before, are usually designed to keep you on the relevant platforms for as long as possible.
To drive up that engagement.
And also to get you to share posts and that sort of stuff. So the things that end up working the best is just kind of, because of just how the human brain works, you kind of get desensitized to things really quickly. And so your brain always kind of compares to the superlative, as in, if this is not literally the best thing ever, then, like, why even bother? It's a bit of an exaggeration, but the idea is still there. And so those platforms naturally exacerbate any sort of tendencies that you might have, and obviously politically speaking, that happens as well. And I think that's sort of the biggest issue, where people on both sides are driven to even more strongly believe in things on that side and to believe even more extreme things on that side. And so you then end up with, again, if some people are drifting right, some people are drifting left, then like that increases the gap. Obviously, if it only pushed people in one direction, that would technically be better. As in if it pushed everyone in that direction. But obviously,
I don't know, man. That seems kind of.
I mean, I'm not saying I want
yucky.
I want algorithms to push us into any direction, because in theory, you would hope that we use our free will that we don't have because the universe is predetermined. But like, as far as we perceive it to be, to actually use that, right, to make our own decisions rather than being driven by some sort of not necessarily nefarious algorithm, but like just an algorithm that inadvertently ends up doing that. I know there's some speculation that maybe some places do make certain decisions intentionally, but I think still the biggest driving factor is just greed and like retention and that sort of stuff. And yeah, so obviously fixing those algorithms in a way where they just aren't built in as predatory of a fashion would certainly help prevent further polarization, but I don't think it undoes the current polarization necessarily.
Yeah. So on that point, I think like I don't really have any backing because like didn't have that much time to prepare for this topic. But from like my experience so far with personally talking about like stuff that me and my conversation partner don't really agree with and see things from like radically different points, perspectives. I don't think introducing content that is contrary to your beliefs is going to be beneficial at all. I think it will just make the problem worse. So based on that, I think just slowly introducing more and more like less radical content would be better until you like bridge the gap between the two sides or more sides or whatever.
So you effectively use the same method that would be used for radicalization, just in reverse, by just pulling people more towards the center again. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure how good that will work, because like as you described earlier, you kind of instinctively gravitate towards the more radical content. So
I don't know. So I think one important point that you said is that confrontation doesn't usually work, right? And so that is something to keep in mind. I think there are some important ideas, right? Like seeding doubt in some ways, right? I mean, obviously, there are suppositions that are just objectively wrong, right? And so in those cases, often I'm seeding doubt and kind of allowing people to find their way sort of back to the truth in a way. Works. Obviously, some of it is not as cut and dry. I mean, you do have to like kind of combat misinformation and kind of bring people back to that. At least we feel like we all live in the same reality, because I think some of it we just have to accept, right? Like some people might disagree on things because certain things just can't be disagreed upon, right? Like that's the whole what is it that people always say, like reasonable minds can differ, right? And that is fine, and that we should kind of also take to heart to not like see that as like just because someone believes something that's different from what we believe is not necessarily an attack on our beliefs, right? And so oftentimes people instinctively become defensive when it comes to those sort of things, and that obviously is bad. But when it comes to like factually untrue things, and again, right, like the January 6th I mentioned, right, that happened because people thought there was major voter fraud that just wasn't there. Like they believed something that was objectively untrue, then they were riled up, and then that became at least partially violent. I mean, I think there's a big mixed bag of people that were there, and some were really just like were basically in the crowd and just went along with whatever was happening. And some were like showing up with zip ties and built a gallows out in front of the door, and like that is terrifying. But so combating misinformation is definitely important, and there's, I mean, first on the front end, as you said, like adjust the algorithms, but also it's harder to kind of make people not believe something that they already believe. So kind of like to remove a belief from someone is harder than to instill it in the first place. So there's the psychological effect known as anchoring, where the first piece of information on a subject that you hear, you generally tend to trust, and that creates a baseline, right? And so once you have a baseline expectation, your position can be shifted a little bit, but oftentimes you can't just like completely uproot it quite as easily. And obviously you shouldn't, every time you get new information, like completely change everything, because sometimes information is just wrong. And obviously we talked about the importance of like reliable sources and fact checking, that sort of stuff. But in as far as convincing other people, asking questions is sometimes a good way of sort of making people see the flaws in their logic or in their beliefs, where you don't want to be confrontational about it, because then they become defensive, and as soon as you become defensive, you basically can't be reasonable with it.
Yes.
And so I think it's very important to try to understand other people's positions, not just to make them reconsider, but also because occasionally you might learn something, right? Even people that you like vehemently disagreed with.
Be like genuinely curious about their position.
Yeah. And even people that you disagree with will occasionally have some like reasonable beliefs, or sometimes also it's just important to notice that a lot of false beliefs didn't start out that way, right? They started out as like, maybe they were a little overly concerned about a real thing, and then like they came into circles that like played it up more and more and more until the actual belief is completely unreasonable. But there's like oftentimes a kernel of truth to those sort of things. And first of all, fighting that is kind of useful at times, because then you can look into, for example, how that could be addressed, right? To where if they suggest solutions to a problem that doesn't exist, it's kind of hard to address. But if the sort of underlying fear is something that can be addressed, that, for example, is also something that can be done, but also just oftentimes people have these contradictory beliefs, or those like that are just clearly erroneous when you're looking at the facts. But just by asking them, and try not to be condescending, but like, why do you believe that? What makes you say that? Like, how did you come to that conclusion, right? Like those sort of questions. And maybe you want to be a bit more subtle here and there, because again, right, like it's not supposed to sound like a semantic, and as Sergej said, right, like be genuinely curious, right? Optimally, you do want to learn why they believe what they believe, even if it only helps you understand the next person that believes the same thing better. And by the way, I say understand better, but don't assume that everyone came to their beliefs the same way. It's always try to make as few assumptions as possible, generally speaking, because that's another thing that really gets people defensive very quickly. When you make an incorrect assumption about why they believe what they do believe, it's also an easy way to shut things down. And then ask the questions.
Assumptions are basically what led both like you yourself and like the person you're speaking with to their respective positions. So can't really operate on the same assumptions.
Yeah, and
you have to find them out. And you can't really ask someone what are your assumptions, unless they're like a scientist or something.
Yeah, philosopher or
then
something.
They might actually be able to answer.
I mean, sometimes it's very difficult, and there are some fundamentally different world beliefs, right? Like the idea, like when it comes to questions like equality and hierarchy, right? Some people believe there is an innate hierarchy in nature, and some people believe that there is no innate hierarchy and that equality is sort of the default state, if you will. And which of those two you believe, and I'm not going to say that like one is necessarily objectively truer than the other, because we have seen examples of both cropping up very early on in human development and also in other species. But whichever one of those you believe is going to very substantially influence how you see certain policy suggestions, for example, right? It's the whole thing about social security programs. People that dislike social security programs oftentimes have a hierarchical view where if someone below them gets more, that inevitably means that they get less. It's kind of the idea that sort of there's a finite amount of good or a finite amount of any resource in the world. And for some resources that is true, but not for everything. And so it's very hard to tell that person, right? Like, oh, like this can work if like they have a fundamental belief that says that like in some way this can't work. And so it kind of becomes difficult to then make an argument. And oftentimes people on the left will argue like with like towards equality and like how equality is good and so on and so forth. And then the people on the right who believe, I'm sure they accept on both sides, obviously I'm generalizing, that there's a hierarchical world. And if you tell them how good equality can be, like all they hear is that you're trying to make someone's life better, which inevitably means that you're going to make someone else's life worse, right? That's because that's just how they view things. And any argument that you like leftists would make to each other about why like equality and why certain programs lead to more equality and blah blah, like none of that matters, right? Because you're starting with the wrong assumptions, and thereby you're just not gonna get anywhere. And that's just an example that I like happen to know what the underlying assumptions are, but those sort of things happen a lot. And so that is one thing, but also with people that, for example, believe in conspiracy theories, right? Oftentimes just interrogating their, it sounds a bit too confrontational almost, but
yeah,
questioning their, like just learning about why they believe what they do is really good. I mean, obviously, that doesn't mean that you learn, oh, this is where they clearly have like an erroneous thing and then I can poke a hole into it, because again, get something offensive, probably doesn't work. But if you can kind of make them think about where the flaws in their beliefs are, like kind of like lead them there, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, as it were. But like just leading them in the direction, they can then realize where there are flaws. And that doesn't mean you're going to change someone's mind immediately. That generally doesn't happen. I mean,
yeah.
I like some people are more open-minded and try to like be convincible to some degree, right? Like I definitely know that, especially on issues that I didn't have strong opinions on before, I have oftentimes been convinced by arguments. But especially if you have already like a deep belief, that's going to be very difficult to convince someone. But if you just, again, you plant that seed of doubt, if you will, in their mind, that is going to grow and is going to eventually lead to them realizing that they're wrong, right? I mean, I think a good example of that from my personal experience would be my experience with religion, right? Germany is still like a predominantly Christian country. And so I grew up in an environment where most people would identify as Christian. And, there are churches around, and we had a religion class at school that it's called a religion class, but it's effectively, for the most part, a Christianity class. And for the most part, the teachers there themselves are believers. And, I mean, you can... and oftentimes it gets taught in maybe a bit more of a factual way than it should, but that's besides the point. But, I grew up in that environment, and I considered myself a Christian for the longest time. For a while, at least. And eventually I realized that, like, the things I learned about science in school, and that I understood to be true, and the things I learned about religion seemed to have some contradictions. And, at first you make excuses for it, or you try to fit it together, and eventually you realize that something has to give. And now I don't believe in science anymore. Now I don't believe in religion anymore. I just thought it would have been a funny twist to the story. Like, oh, actually, I realized that science is just wrong. I mean, obviously, because you can usually see where science derives its ideas from, whereas, I mean, you can also find where religions derive their ideas from, but that just even further undermines your belief, I would think. And so, like, the science doesn't quite line up, and then you learn about one of the things we did actually learn in religion classes, for example, how the creation myth came to be, right? How that was like inspired by the Babylonians and like how they had a creation story and the Christians kind of adapted it. And I was like, wait, but if they adapted it from an earlier myth, from another society, whose beliefs presumably are false then, because, they believe in different gods, why is the creation story of ours that is inspired by theirs then true, right? Like, that doesn't make sense. And so, at first, I was like, okay, okay, obviously, the creation story, I kind of never really believed to be, like, literal, so, like, okay, I guess our metaphorical creation story is copied, which is strange, but okay, maybe they spoke the metaphor maybe in words that people around them can understand, that kind of works, and, again, like, the science is like, okay, yeah, again, the Bible is mostly not literal, especially, like, the early stuff, so, like, I guess the science doesn't have to fully add up, and also God is beyond that, and blah, 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 and then you come to eventually where it's like, oh yeah, so how, like, God created the universe. Actually, no, there was something like the Big Bang. Okay, so what if, hear me out, what if God started the Big Bang? Right? And so I eventually realized, I'm not sure if I was introduced to the concept at the time, but that what I believed in effectively at that point was the God of the gaps, right? As in, anything that can't be explained must have been God. And everything that is explained, obviously, we have an explanation for. And so I'm not sure if I knew of the concept, because I specifically remember realizing at some point, wait, so if we discover an explanation for something that we don't currently have an explanation for, that I'm currently attributing to God, then I would have to adjust my beliefs again, right? And so I'm like, that doesn't seem right. Right? Like, why would I believe something that I can't even keep consistent, right? Now, obviously, to some degree, adjusting your beliefs to unknown information is something you should do, but like the fact that all of this is like, I realized eventually that this doesn't work. And, I was never particularly devout or anything, so, like, it's not like it was, for some people it's like a big thing when they realize that what they always believed is false, and, like, for me, it was a bit of a gradual process, and I was never that deeply into it, so it wasn't, like, that dramatic, but still, right, that took a while, until from, like, when I first started, like, having the first seeds of doubt, which I probably didn't even, like, really consider doubt at that point. It's more like, I felt more like I was unsure about the details and a lot of stuff, right? But then eventually, after probably years, right? Eventually, like, I'm like, okay, something has to give, right? And this whole religion thing doesn't seem to work the way, like, nothing I believe about this really works. And then eventually, I was like, okay, maybe this is just not it. And now I'm an atheist. Which, if you're new here, hi. Otherwise, you probably have already heard me say that before. I don't know. It doesn't come up that much, but I feel like it does come up quite often. But, it took a while, and I wasn't even that invested in it in the first place. And so, just imagining what it means, right, to try to convince someone who is, like, very deeply involved. I mean, like, people like flat earthers, oftentimes it's like a big part of their personality, right? Like, it's a big part of what defines who they are as a person. And so, getting them to realize that the flat earth is wrong. You're not going to have one gotcha, or even one, like, actually, like, well-structured, like, inquisitional... It sounds so... Okay, it sounds confrontational again, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? Like, even, like, an actual deep conversation that, like, maybe leads them towards some of the holes in the theory is not going to be, like, the one thing that turns them around. But once those doubts are there, like, they might be more willing to absorb information that contradicts their views, or when they get when new points get expressed to them about their views, right? Like, another flat earther explains about why the earth is actually flat, and then they maybe see the flaws in their argument because they're now, like, primed to maybe see the flaws more. And then when they realize that other flat earthers are actually full of shit, then they might realize that, oh, am I full of shit? Right? And so,
yeah,
I think I use a lot more words than necessary to say, like, just be willing to listen and ask some questions. But, again, I think it's important to understand why that is, right? Because I can say to you, oh yeah, you should probably not, like, be confrontational and instead just try to understand what people are saying. And I think that is still good either way because it builds empathy. both ways, right? Because in the polarized world we live in, even if you are convinced that your position is correct, which you probably are, and that doesn't mean that you should necessarily close yourself off to what other people have to say that disagree with you. Because that's also kind of important. So I think it's just that, right? Like the dialogue. That is very important. And then, actually, I have one more specific thing, but before that, I talked way too much. Sorry. I just talked about the importance of listening.
All good.
And I really said much. So now I'm going to listen to what you have to say.
All right. So the reason, like, why being confrontational doesn't work is because, or rather, why listening does work is because people usually like to explain their point of view much, much more than they like to listen to potentially contrary points of view. I don't really fit in that. I'm kind of the opposite, so that's why you see me listen a lot to what JJ has to say most of the time on podcasts. But yeah, as well as you generally just stop really listening to arguments made against your viewpoint.
Oh yeah, that's also important, again, both for yourself and for the other person, but obviously can't really make the other person do it. But the worst thing you can do is, like, when someone starts talking to you, to like already think of your rebuttals while they're still talking, instead of listening to what they have to say, right? Because that is also kind of difficult. In theory, if you are trying to have like a more, like, I don't want to say debate because I don't really like debates, but if you're like trying to actually have like a discussion, right, where you're actually like trying to both express your views, I honestly might suggest taking notes, right? Like, it sounds silly, but I have thought about that before, right? Because if I'm talking to you right now and I'm trying to listen to everything you say, I mean, obviously you don't say much, so it's fine, but and then I'm trying to come up with my next point, then either I'm holding on to my next point or I'm listening to what you have to say afterwards. And if you just write it down, get it out of your system, you know, and then you can ask the question later. So that is also something to keep in mind. And then, obviously, as Sergej said, like, I like to talk, although I do think in some ways I'm also more, I wouldn't say that I'm more of a listener than a talker, obviously, but I do still like hearing people's perspectives and I do like learning things. So I think in that sense we are kind of alike. But I also, whenever I have an opinion, I do kind of sometimes feel the need to share it. So yeah, that is something true.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, on your point about like keeping notes, you can either do that or just make the conversation like really slow. Like, take your time after someone has said their piece, think about it for a bit, and then reply.
Yeah.
Like, I usually do that with my friends when I have deep conversations. Or if I can, I also like to do it in text form altogether.
Yeah.
So you have that history to go back to and reference.
Oh yeah. I always like that's not necessarily directly related, but whenever like scheduling stuff happens, I'm always happy when it happens in text because I'll just have the text that says the date and time, because I hate it when I have like a conversation with someone and we're like scheduling something, and then we maybe talk for another half hour after that, and then by the end I'm supposed to remember.
And then you completely forget,
right? It's like So I think when the two of us talk, we also do have a lot of those like long pauses sometimes especially when we have those deeper conversations. Obviously, that's not something that like we can really do. I wouldn't really want to do it on the podcast because this is meant to be listened to.
No, so nobody would want to listen to that. Like, so there'd be like 2/3 of it just silent. So
that is also part of. I mean, I am like a fairly talkative person in general, so like it's not that I'm inauthentic when I when I have like these whenever I get worked up and I have like these long monologues. Like that is 100% like what I would do otherwise. But sometimes I do like jump in immediately when you finish talking, rather than like letting it sit for a while, thinking about it deeper, because that's just the format. The one thing that I want to say that I never quite hit on, but almost got to, is, and this is kind of a difficult line also to draw, but punishing people for believing wrong things isn't productive, right? So what I'm thinking about is the whole canceling thing, which is still an overblown problem in general, but trying to ostracize people for having incorrect beliefs doesn't lead to them fixing their beliefs in most cases. It just leads to them resenting you more and to them seeking out people that have shared beliefs, and just kind of drives them further in, right? That's what happens. I feel like, I don't know, a good example might be something like, if someone doesn't really know that much about trans people, right? Which isn't really that out there, right? Like, in a lot of communities, there just aren't that many openly trans people out there. And so if they, use wrong terminology or wrong pronouns, it's very easy to get called out for that on the internet, right? People are, very insistent that you use correct terminology. And sometimes when you ask questions, it can seem like you're, trying to be confrontative as well, because oftentimes people that already disagree, and transphobes will try to do these whole gotcha questions. And so the problem is that those people that don't understand will be asking a question or using terminology wrong or something. And then if someone's immediate reaction to that is to just try to push them away, tell them what a bad person they are for saying that stuff and that sort of stuff, that is going to drive them to other people that are not as friendly about trans people, and then eventually it's going to drive them to the transphobes that straight up hate trans people, and because those are the only people that are going to accept them for who they are, for how they express themselves, right? Whereas if we're more open and we're hey, by the way, I'm sure you didn't mean anything by this, but here is why how you express that is maybe not something that people like, then they can learn from that. They can say, oh, I didn't know that, right? And then go from there. And again, right, not everyone is that, right? Some people are just trying to be assholes. And sometimes, obviously, if you know that someone is just trying to be an asshole, fair enough. But it's kind of important. And I think the trans example is sort of one that is relevant to the modern day, in the sense where I still think to this day there are a lot of people that just, don't get trans people, which, I've heard trans people say, I don't know what's so hard. I don't know what there's not to get about it. But, if you've never been exposed to that concept before, honestly, it is kind of hard, some of it, right? Also, for example, things that a lot of people get wrong, right? Like the trans man versus trans woman, right? It seems very obvious what those terms mean, right? So okay, when someone is transitioning...
But I still mix them up sometimes.
When someone is okay, here's the thing, right? When someone is transitioning from male to female, are they trans men or trans women, Sergej?
From male to female?
Yes.
Trans woman.
Yes. See, right, but that makes sense because they are women that happen to be trans, right? But if you don't know trans people, then oftentimes they will be explained in a way oh, it's like a man trying to be a woman, or some explanation like that. And if you come from that background, then you still see them as men, and so it's very easy to think that it's a man who's trans, right? But it's not, right? And so I can see why people get these terms wrong, because honestly, right, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, I didn't know any of this, right? And so I also thought this was confusing. Also, the pronoun thing, right? It's kind of, obviously if someone says, please use she, her pronouns, right? Just, do it, right? Don't be an asshole about it. But at the same time, right, if no one tells you, and you're talking about a trans woman, and it's why would you go out of your way to use he, him pronouns? But again, right, a lot of, I think it's getting better these days, but a lot of media that talks about it, still, at least of the older variety, is again the whole taking the man who thinks he's a woman angle, and then then he is kind of the natural pronoun to get to. And I think a lot of people don't mean anything bad by that, right? And so there's no reason to be aggressive about it, because that is just, again, going to drive them towards the transphobes who intentionally do it, right? But so I think those sort of things, oftentimes you just have to be, I think, unless you have reason to believe otherwise, it's always good to expect the best from people in that sense, right? But it's like, I think there's a philosophical razor about, I think it was meant to dispel conspiracy theories, but it works here where it's like, do not attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by incompetence, right? Where it's like, don't assume people are evil, assume they're stupid. I mean, don't assume that people are stupid generally, that leads to condescension, but like, whenever someone like does something like this where like, it could be a genuine mistake, just assume it's a mistake, right? Gently correct them. Maybe explain to them why what they said was wrong. Rather than just immediately like telling them they're an asshole and they shouldn't be saying that, right? Like, I mean, there's just, also, of course, it's one of those where effectively I both times said, like, correct them, right? But sometimes delivery is more important than message, right? Obviously, you can't really be particularly gentle about telling someone that they're an asshole, but, like, hey, what you said is wrong. It is customary, or that sounds, like, it's generally accepted to be expressed this way, right? Like, the generally accepted way is, and I think there are ways to do that. Another example that is maybe not as relevant anymore, but I think I brought it before, and it's probably the most concrete example that I've ever experienced where, like, it was very clear, I saw a post on Reddit during the Black Lives Matter thing, which, I mean, Black Lives Matter as an organization still exists, obviously, but during the George Floyd protests around that time. And I believe the question was something like, oh, what's so bad about All Lives Matter, right? And that sounds a bit like a gotcha, right? Because Black Lives Matter, obviously, is against police brutality. It's like for supporting black people, effectively. And then some people that didn't like Black Lives Matter coined the slogan, All Lives Matter, which is not a stupid thing to say, but obviously is specifically meant to counter the Black Lives Matter thing. And so, that person just genuinely didn't know that. And again, ostensibly, All Lives Matter is not a bad thing, right? Like, yes, obviously all lives matter, right? Like, that's a reasonable thing to say. And so the person, I think it was worded something like, what's wrong with All Lives Matter? Or something like that. And it's like, that sounds like the exact thing that the All Lives Matter people would say when someone gets upset about it, right? Someone's like, oh, you're like a racist or whatever. And it's like, oh, well, what do you mean I'm a racist? I just said that All Lives Matter, right? And so, but that person just genuinely was like, oh yeah, what is wrong with this? And so I saw, right, like, I think there was some people that got angry at that comment because it sounded like a gotcha, like, oh, what is wrong with saying All Lives Matter? And there was at least one person that genuinely answered a question, like, hey, the Black Lives Matter is against police brutality, and some people have a sort of counter slogan, came up with the All Lives Matter thing, and it's generally used by racists. And then that person got a reply from the original person that asked the question, was like, oh, thanks, I didn't know that, right? It was a perfectly innocent comment that could have, with the exact same wording, be left by an asshole to try to provoke people. And so, assume that they were genuine in their question, answer it thoughtfully, and either, right, they're an asshole that tried to further provoke you, and then you can just leave it there, or you just genuinely help the person understand something, and, I'm not saying that person would have definitely become a racist if no one had explained to them where the song came from, but being ostracized for asking a question that, like, is a genuine, like, innocent question, like, is not good, because at that point, the only people that are, like, willing to accept you are those people that you don't necessarily want them to be influenced by. And so I think that is also a very important thing, where we should generally give people the benefit of the doubt. I think that's what I was trying to say earlier, right? Where when people have a question, maybe just answer it, right? Okay, I think that's all that I definitely want to say about this, and I think I ended up saying more than I thought I was, but yeah.
Also on, like, slightly different topics too, but it's fine.
I mean, yeah, but I mean they're
related.
If someone's asking a question about your position, then presumably they have a different position. Mm-hmm. And so by informing them, you come closer together. So I do think that like definitely is part of the polarization discussion, right? Like the being open to discussion and being able to answer questions, right? Like, because, and again, just like taking maybe the questions at face value rather than inferring some nefarious intent. And, when the nefarious intent is there, either the person is going to try to provoke you further, at which point, fuck them. Or, in some cases, that can actually be fairly disarming, right, as well, where someone's trying to provoke you, and you just give them, like, a genuinely well-thought-out answer. Like, maybe they don't even want to provoke you any further after that. That can also happen.
Yeah. They might not even find a way to provoke you after that.
So anything else you want to say about polarization, or do we want to go to facts?
One more minor thing being that, like, even if you, like, fix the algorithm, like, right now, you still wouldn't really get back that many people. Because, like, at some point you will join, like, separate communities hosted off the platform that aren't really controlled by any algorithm.
Yeah, and that's why I said early on, right? Like, fixing the algorithms is a very important thing to, like, not worsen this problem, but then also we need things like being able to talk to people on the other side and have these open and honest conversations. Try to refrain from attacking one another unnecessarily. And just if someone has a question, answer it. If you want to know more about someone else's beliefs, or you want to maybe try to persuade them, ask questions. I think that's a big... I think we could have probably gotten all of this in, like, 5 points or something. Like, like, ask questions, answer questions, fix the algorithms, and, like, show empathy. Like, there was, like, a couple points there, but I do think it's still worthwhile to talk about why those things are true, right? Like, why we should ask questions. Why we shouldn't be confrontational. I was going to say confrontative, and that's not a word.
That was like a word.
By the way, FYI, right? On the internet, not everyone speaks... Well, okay, if they're communicating with you, I presume they speak your language, but not everyone's a native speaker of your language, and not everyone comes from your country, right? That is about the whole not making assumptions thing. That becomes even more important when you're talking to people who have a completely different cultural context. I think it's also important to kind of mention because, like, with the All Lives Matter thing, it's like, I think if you live in America at the time when that was going on, it's probably pretty difficult not to know what that was about. But if you live outside and you don't consume that much American media, because that was very much an American thing. I mean, obviously, anything that happens in America does reach some level of international awareness, but, like, not to the same degree necessarily. Like, I think Black Lives Matter was, like, at least in all Western nations, kind of was something that people were aware of. But also...
I mean, I was aware of, like, Black Lives Matter, but I didn't know what All Lives Matter was, or how it was bad, until you told me that exact story.
Right, because it's a very specific thing, because, like, people that are against a protest, and, like, a specific subgroup of people that are against a protest that have their own slogan, like, that's not a thing that, like, everyone's necessarily aware of. And that's, again, I'm assuming the person that was asked the question was an American. I don't remember if they specified in the question or something. I want to say they probably didn't, because I do seem to remember that question being something that could be misinterpreted as being like one of those, like, gotchas where, again, because ostensibly all lives matter is not a negative thing to say, but, like, obviously. So what is your fact of the week?
Right, we do have those. So you probably know, like, about gravitational lensing and stuff.
Yes.
How, like, those computer simulated models of black holes look kind of wonky.
Yes.
With all those rings around them, where you can see a star or galaxy like 3-4 times at the same time in different places. So, turns out you can use that as an like actual lens.
I know.
You can do that with a star too. You don't really need a black hole to do that. You could also use our star, the sun, to do that.
Okay.
To get a telescope that is basically the size of the sun. To get really, really high resolution images of planets that are like hundreds of light years away. And there are currently plans being worked on. They're like really early in the development stages. But like there are ideas and like actual plans being worked on that we potentially, maybe, might actually even see in our lifetime. With like a big asterisks, obviously. We can actually observe a planet like 100 light years away.
Okay, so
in like moderately high resolution, like I don't know, couple hundred pixels.
So I do remember that JWST, the James Webb Space Telescope for the uninitiated, has taken some images of stars that had like gravitational lensing from, I think, black holes generally, and that allowed them to get like slightly better images than they would have if they like didn't have the gravitational lens there, and so that allows them to look at older stars, and they would maybe be able to look at that quality if there was no gravitational lens in front of the star. Obviously, they can't like choose whether or not there is a lensing object in between, because like at those distances, like if you move the telescope slightly, it's not gonna actually. I was just thinking about how angles actually do allow you to like have some very minor changes that at a very long distance, but then the object behind the star would also behind the lens would also disappear, I guess. But anyways, I digress. My main problem with that is, you know what I know. One thing that I do know about the sun that is like maybe could be a bit of a problem,
which is
it's very bright.
Yes. I mean, we already do have like tons of different weather telescopes or telescope satellites pointed at the sun. That is a thing. Like they use like a blackout ring. I don't know what the actual term is for that, where they just block out the actual sun and just record the stuff around it.
I mean to be fair, the James Webb Telescope also has something like that, where if they are looking at a distant star, they can also like have a thing that like blocks the actual star itself so that they can see around the star a bit better. But I do still think that like if you're like right by the sun, that like could have some problems. Plus the other problem being that the sun is pretty hot, which is why James Webb is always like on the dark side of the Earth, basically, like always in the Earth's shadow, because otherwise it gets way too hot. But yeah.
The thing about the sun is that it doesn't really bend light all that much, so you have to be pretty far away.
Oh, right.
The minimum focus distance is like 550 AU, which is quite far away.
Wait, so
the currently the farthest man-made,
right? So
yes.
You're saying 550 times the distance between the Earth and the sun?
Yes. Huh. So the currently farthest object away from the sun is one of the Voyager.
Yeah, I want to say Voyager
crafts.
2.
I forgot which one.
I want to say 2, but I'm not
I think
sure.
Yeah.
That is, just for clarification, the furthest man-made object, obviously. Just
yes.
It's kind of obvious when you think about it. It's just you didn't say it, so I want to bring it up.
Yeah, I thought I mentioned that, but maybe not. Anyway, it's like 150 astronomical units away right now, which is already like really far. But the plan, like right now, the idea is to use light sails and use the sun as like a gravitational slingshot. So you do get really close to the sun, like a quarter of Mercury's orbital distance.
This
and
close.
Slingshot from there.
So
yes.
First of all, you said a bunch of
so
things
they do actually need to resist a lot of heat.
I mean, listen, right? I like me good slingshot maneuver. I like me solar sails, right? Like all cool stuff. Do you perchance know how far the nearest star is to us that is like not our sun?
Was it 4.5 light years away for Alpha Centauri?
That's like an entirely different. No, I was just like, I genuinely didn't know. I was like,
or was it 3.5? I'm not sure.
Listen, right? The order of magnitude is kind of all that matters. The point is, my first thought when you said like it has to be like really far away from the sun was like, why don't we just use a different sun? But like, yeah, no, it's way too far away. Got it. Good. That's all I wanted to know.
4.24.
I mean, I don't know. I was gonna say I don't know what the AU is in light years, but yeah, it should be about 8 light minutes, I think. So yeah.
AU to light years.
It's gonna be like 0.000 something. Because,
yeah, let's do that the other way around. One light year is 63.2 thousand astronomical units.
Yeah, I mean, what I was gonna say is, yeah, okay, so I was
so
gonna
yeah,
say,
that's like way past the focal distance.
1 AU, as I said, is 8.316746396769 light minutes. So I was pretty good with 8. Because, so yeah, what you have to remember, 1 AU is I believe it's the average distance between the Earth and the Sun, because obviously it's not exactly always the same. It's not a perfectly circular orbit, I believe. Pretty much every orbit has some eccentricity, I believe that's... Anyways. Secondly, light takes about 8 minutes to get from the Sun to the Earth. Hence, 8 light minutes.
Yep. I didn't know that. No, I do. And I probably heard it like a bunch.
I think it's about 6 or 7 seconds to the moon from the Earth.
Yeah. What I do know is like it's like about half an hour to Mars. Usually. Sometimes. Or was it like 20-ish minutes?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously it depends on where in its orbit it is, but I think if they're at the closest, I would assume that the distance between Earth and Mars is a lot less than between Earth and the Sun.
I don't know. I might be talking more crap.
I mean, to be fair, like, I am very capable of doing that as well, so, like, who's to say? My fact of the week is a lot more terrestrial, and as a matter of fact, I'm gonna ask you to have a guess at this one, because I like making you guess things. Where do you think the Venus flytrap is from?
Even is that?
Venus flytrap is a plant that eats flies.
Oh.
Hey, have like looks like they have a mouth, and then they go.
Yeah, like I don't know. Maybe Africa.
Okay, not what I would have thought. Most Africa is pretty. Well, a lot of Africa is pretty dry. Although I guess specifically Sahara is pretty dry. I guess if you go far enough south, it probably gets better. See, I would have thought you might say South America, but like just from a sort of north-south standpoint, that's not even too far off. So the answer, by the way, the correct answer is Carolina.
Which one?
Well, it's right on the border between North and South Carolina, but like it's partly both. But like, yeah, no, it's in the U.S., right?
Okay.
So like,
damn,
it's a lot more northern than you'd think, which is kind of the big thing.
Yeah.
Also, they're classified as vulnerable in terms of extinction, but that is besides the point. I just learned that as well today when I was double checking that they were in fact from Carolina. And yeah, no, apparently the original place they're from is literally just also like a little bit of north, of north and even less of South Carolina. Like apparently, That's like the only place that they're from as well. So they're actually like very local and also...
I just assumed they're like tropical.
Yeah, right? That's what I... Like, when I say they're not tropical, I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, no, they are not tropical. If like... I don't think it's even far enough to be subtropical. I think it's probably just a moderate, right?
Probably.
Let's see.
I don't know.
Climate zones. I think that's what I'm looking for. Images. That looks about right. Hey, that... Great. Okay, so apparently the Carolinas would be, what is that? 3, whatever that means. No, so okay, let's see. That's, I think, what I was actually looking for. I don't know if the US climate zones thing is actually... great. CSA. Why can't you just say, like, tropic and subtropic? Fuck. Okay. There it says it's mixed forests as the biome, which is,
Most of the state has a humid subtropical climate.
Okay, so it is still subtropical. So I guess not that far from the tropics.
Except in the higher elevations of the Appalachians.
Appellation.
Oh, yes. Yes, that sounds much more correct. Which have a subtropical highland climate.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's like saying, oh...
Thanks, Wikipedia.
I love it, right? It's subtropical, except for at higher elevations where it's subtropical highlands. It's like, yeah, that kind of checks out, huh? I would almost suspect that all highlands in subtropical areas might have a subtropical highland. Yeah, that is, yeah. Fun. Now, how about we do our weekly Squirtle? Squirtle time.
Let's go. Yeah.
That is how we always start.
Thank you for pre-typing. Yes.
Okay. Now. What do we do? I mean, I guess the two main options are to try to get some of the letters that are pointing at some squares, or alternatively, I
should have memorized like a second word to try.
Right, because I was gonna say the other.
Because I feel like I'm having the same problem every week, every other week.
I was gonna say mostly, but I think that's one too long
lately.
Right? Because STYO. Right, like those are sort of the letters I'm looking for.
STRO and perhaps P or F.
STRO?
Like, how about store?
How about story?
Yeah, how about that?
I mean, to be fair, like, it's not like I came up with that at the same time. I literally just heard you say store, and I'm like, why do we use an E? We could be using a Y.
No, Ys aren't that common, and we can use the E to pinpoint where the other E's are pointing.
I'm not sure if Ys aren't
That'd be my argument, but, like, I don't know.
I mean, I like Y because it's semi-vowel, right? So it's basically still a vowel in most cases. So I like just checking all the vowels just out of principle. I know they might not technically be the most common, but I think just in terms of... Okay.
Oh, well.
Well, no Ys, which I guess is good information, though. But, yeah, no, there's... almost looks like the top left might be an S, but then again, that's kind of the same. Oh, do you want to test? Do you want to test for I? Because that is like sort of the.
Kind of do, yeah.
In some ways, most likely spot. Oh right, that's the only T. I was like, where's our second T hint? But like, no, there's just a.
There's just one, yeah.
I was gonna say style, but that would be a Y. I mean, still, but that's double L,
yeah.
Which is a bit awkward. I mean, we haven't tried L yet, which I mean, also we haven't tried L yet, which is the actually if I was gonna. We haven't tried L yet, which is probably the most common letter. We haven't tried maybe M. At the same time, we do have, at the very least, the T hint is the only one where, we can't really point another intersection to test it with. Although we could say the same with the R. So having the second letter be either a T or an R, I think, would be sensible, although by no means necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if we want to test new letters, I would suggest M and L. Maybe. I don't know what. Climb. Wait, it tests the L, but it doesn't do the RT thing that I said, but it does, otherwise it does have an L. It has a C, which is not great, but not terrible, probably. It has an M, which I like. It has a B, which is...
I do actually like it. Like, it has a bunch of letters.
Yeah. Yeah, I think all of the letters that I said, except for the I,
aren't really common, but do come up occasionally.
Well, I would say L and M are probably fairly common.
E also came up semi-regularly in past squirrels.
Is it just me or do the I's look, the L's look funny with the I dot over it?
Yes, they do.
Which is just like happenstance, but still, it's really funny to me. Okay, now I guess you said you like it, so I'm just gonna. Well, guess what? We got the I correct. No M's. That's something. We also now have both the C and the S, like both hints pointing at like one singular square, basically. Huh.
We now have a bunch of hints to work with.
I mean,
we definitely that many. Yeah.
Because that's from both directions. We could try something with L, we could try something with T, we could try something with... We can't try something with... But... I mean, second position L makes a lot of sense. That would check for both this hint and this hint. We could test something like, I don't know, plebs. Probably not the best idea. We probably want to try like a C or an S in first position, maybe.
Especially with it containing a B, which is not...
Oh, right, sorry. Yeah, no Bs.
Present in...
I'm not used to having tested Bs so early.
Yeah, same.
Steps.
Steps. Not the biggest fan of having two S in there.
Okay, how about steep?
Also not not really a fan of two E's.
The
one thing I want to mention though is we don't necessarily have to have the L in second position. Just having an L anywhere in the word will help us pinpoint it quite a bit.
Oh, by the way, first of all, one place that we would maybe want to try an E is where they intersect, obviously. Testing multiple E's is not necessarily terrible. If we don't hit it, then we can very easily limit it. And also, if we do want to have an L in second position and we want to have an E right there, one word that I did just come up with is sleep, which still has double E, but it tests P, which you wanted to do earlier, and it does test L in second, and it tests S in first, which we do have a hint for on both directions as well.
I have a word that doesn't quite work, especially for the E. It's clean. Tests quite a few letters positions.
Yeah, no, I don't hate it.
Also gives us another A, because we only have one square to go off of right now.
Okay, yeah, clean. Except that we would optimally want to have the E and the A the other way around. Except that it obviously doesn't work. But yeah.
Yeah.
Wait. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it would be pretty tricky to get an E in second last position if we do want to actually start something with SL or CL, where...
I mean, we don't. Just gotta include them somewhere.
No, but I'm saying, right, because then we do have to basically go with a double vowel, and then there's almost always the first vowel is going to be... I mean, unless we want to do something like IE, but then, that also is not that common, and also there's no reason to try another I. Also, yeah, double I's. Great. So, I think sleep and clean are probably two of the best suggestions we've had so far. Obviously, if you don't like the double E and you just want to have an E in there at all, you could also go with slept. Gives you an extra T.
That could work, yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything...
That would actually give us quite a bit of information for the T, especially.
Yeah. So you're thinking slept, or
yeah, sure.
I mean, it doesn't have the A that you like, but it does have the T that you like. I mean, I feel like slept and clean to me are fairly toss up, so I'm gonna let you decide which one you want to use.
They don't really care either way. Like, both give us quite a lot of information.
Well, I nailed that ass! Which makes me think that this might be the C. I was just thinking, so, because you said that you don't care either way, I was like, okay, let's use one of those two then. And then I was thinking, right, I pointed out that, like, a bunch of the shit is pointing at this corner, right? Which letter do we expect is more likely to be twice in the quiz, right? S or C? And that's why I was like, okay, if this is the C, then the S's have to be somewhere, so that's why I slept.
Yep.
Oh. I guess,
the L hints are rather interesting.
Yeah, no, they are, but I mean, I guess technically this would fulfill almost all of them, right? Like, except that we also still need one in this. One in this, so I guess, yeah. Oh, wait. I mean, I guess, yeah, these two spots, I guess, would be the most obvious. I don't know, it's like they have to be there, but... I mean, E hints do even more heavily point to the fact that this might be the E, which we said before already. Although, then the question would be... What the fuck goes there? Is it sales? Or souls?
Maybe.
Oh, no O's. Never mind. But, like, sales would still work. Because if the L and the E are correct, which, to be fair, guesses. Although IL is definitely sort of a sensible connection. Well, yeah, sure, connection works is the word. Sequence is, I guess, more what I was trying to say, but either way. And if I'm already pointing at intersections,
Yeah.
It's also... Oh, right, there's actually technically another T intersection, though. Probably not both T, but I mean, they could be both T, but like I don't think they are necessarily.
So it would be quite nice, I guess, to have an R in the second or third position, I think.
In the second or third position for the purposes of what, this hint? Or
just pinpointing it. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, second position, no. We should not have it in the second position on the second thought.
In the row,
first or third, that'd be great.
In the row, it would have to. In the row, you almost would want it to have it in the second. In the column, you specifically would not want to have it in the second. That's about the situation here. Wait, why do you want an R? Just to like limit
just
where it goes
to pinpoint where it is in the column. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. Ether. I mean, the initial E is terrible. Never mind. I don't think you can spell it Aether with just an A. I mean, I know there's a Minecraft mod that is, I believe, just A-T-H-E-R, but normally it's spelled...
Is it?
Is it A-E?
I think they're all spelled A-E.
Because I know that technically the word is either spelled Ash, T-H-E-R, or E-T-H-E-R, and then sometimes the Ash gets spelled as A-E. But I don't know if just A works for Aether. Then again,
I don't think so.
Because I was thinking
also like the R in last position. Right. Check that much. First or third.
You preferably wanted it in the best.
I mean, yeah. Thinking of any other letters I want to explicitly check.
I mean, I would really like to check the T maybe to see if we can figure out where that goes.
T.
In the last column. Like it has to have a T in the last column. So.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was saying Aether, right? Because it checks one of the T positions that I wanted to check. And it has the R. I mean, at the end, it's not exactly where I want to have it. Let's see. The problem is most of the ones that I come up with that actually have a T and an R would be stuff like Ultra, right? Where it's like, where the R is like also very late again. Like, especially like where it can't be, right? So.
Most words I can come up with don't really make sense with the other hints we have, or are too long.
I mean, yeah, I have some that I almost... Wait. How about... I know you said you don't want it in last, but how about alter?
Huh.
I mean, we have an A pointing at this spot. You have an L pointing at both this and that spot. Yeah. You have an E pointing here. Sorry, E pointing there. Still works though. And there, as a matter of fact. And then the R could still point at this spot, right? So like we do still check one of the R positions, even if it isn't your preferred one.
Yeah. Let's go for it. It's better than nothing.
Hey, we got some hits. And then we do still have some information that like the R is in fact where you wanted it to be. Also, the T is in one of the two spots where I want to have it, which I was not one of the ones I tested, but So A is one of these two spots.
I mean, I doubt that a word will start with TL, so like it's almost confirmed. Last row.
The last row. Oh yeah, that's true. I don't think there's an English word that starts with TL. That is actually strikes me as Polish. I don't know why, but like, it seems like something that like certain parts of Eastern Europe would totally do, and then the L probably has a line through it, which I still don't quite know what that means, but
I don't know. Don't have that association.
So I'm gonna remove this T hint for the time being, even though it could still be there because this row also needs one. Actually, but it's probably more likely there. Actually,
yeah.
Actually, that one could totally be alter, couldn't it?
It could, yeah.
No, it could not. It can't have the R. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, I was thinking, where do we put the A? Do we put it here? Or do we put it there? Is it Ka something or is it As something? I mean, if it's something like... It wouldn't be class because it probably doesn't start with double L, although we don't definitively know that there is an L there, but... So in fact, the L, I guess, is not even that likely at this point anymore because we already have the L filled out for the... I'm going to remove this L because there's no reason for that to actually be there. I mean, the row needs an L, which I guess has to be either there or there. Wait. One of these two is an L. And then one of these two is an A. I don't hate class. As in CLASS. Obviously, yes, double letters, not the biggest fan, I know. But, also, this one could be, I don't know, sleet. Right? And this one could be style. Can I spell style with an I? I know I said it earlier. I don't know. Steel, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know.
Style, steel, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, nothing speaks against this being an S. So it could be class. Because now, I did say the L goes here before, which it still could, because we do still need one in the row. But as far as the column is concerned, we already have the necessary amount of L's.
Yeah.
So it might as well go here. They're effectively equally likely.
Let's go for it. I was thinking of maybe we can place the C somewhere else. But
but then we either need
really make it fit anywhere.
SC is rough. C in second position does work.
Like closest I got was Flask, but that obviously uses K instead of C.
Yeah. No, I think C in last is not a winning strategy, and then we'd have to put C basically in second on both words, which seems just less likely than it being in first place for both words.
Yeah.
Wait, actually, we could also go for clasp.
Cannot. I already thought of that. P is not in
also, to be fair,
this puzzle.
Plead will be swapped with a D, so, you know. It was class. I felt good about it. Okay, that other S hint is not helpful. Okay, let's see. I'm thinking sleet. Just because, you know, we're already fairly certain about the T. As a matter of fact, it's virtually guaranteed. And then, if you think about it, right, there is no such thing as slate. But, can't be an A anyways. Slight, I wouldn't know of it. Slute, right? It's like, and it's not like it's gonna be like split, slpet or sltat or something, right? Like, so it almost has to be sleet.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. What letter goes before tile? Because I know I said S, and there's no reason why it does or doesn't have to be S. Actually, no, it does have to be S. It doesn't have to be not S, right? Because we tried class, which has 2 S's, and it said there's exactly 1 S here.
Yes.
Just 1 error. So this can't be an S.
We already have an S.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, right? Like, it cannot be, this letter cannot be an S.
Oh, I see. It
can't be anything but S. Well, it also can't be C or A. But like, so I'm trying to think what this letter could be. Because, utile feels weird, right? Like, I mean, utility is a word, but utile? Because I just also realized we have to...
Kinda sounds like a word, but like, it's kind of weird.
One of those two has to be a U, right? So, it's not the worst that you have ever had.
Oh.
Cutile, vitile, retile, hertile, tile, utile. Can't be itile. Not that that would be a word, but can't be style. It's probably not going to be detile. Okay, can't be anyways. But tile, 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 ultile, ztile.
Yeah, I think it's utile.
Tile, vitile, ntile. I think it is utile. I guess maybe if something has utility, it's utile?
Still kind of weird way to say that.
I mean, yeah, you'd say like useful, but I feel like utile does. When I think about the word, it
makes sense.
One of those weird Aussie,
it's weird.
One of those weird Aussie shortenings, or it is infectus. Okay, so we have the S, we have the U, we have the C. Okay, so we have all the letters that we need in the first row. Okay. Anyone else feeling crust?
What? Yeah.
We need an R in this column. I'm trying to remember. Did we ever try double T's in here? I don't think we did, right? So we don't know that we need exactly 1 T. We just need that we know at least 1 T. So there's nothing speaking against it, strictly speaking, I think. And R can't go there. Could go there. But, you know. We have L. We have I. We have E and L. This is sleet. We have L. Then we have R as well. Okay. This one does have I, E, T, L. This one has E. It has more E than it needs. And this one has T. Yeah, I think everything we have entered thus far, to the best of my knowledge, means that basically all remaining letters can be just about anything. Or, in as far as there are no positive hints that we have not yet fulfilled. I guess is what I should be saying.
Also, no negative hints.
Yeah, there are no negative hints that we're breaking, yes. But I'm saying, like, the squares that we currently have not filled out at all only have negative information to work with.
Yeah.
If we assume that all I entered is true.
Also, like,
given my track record is not the case.
But what I meant by no negative hints is that we don't have white hints that would point to letters that we haven't
Right, you're always like looking at that, but yeah, that is true. We have used those, yeah.
We don't have that many white hints to begin with.
Okay,
this time.
I guess the most useful place to look at then, if we want to try solving it right now, would be this one. First of all, we have to enter something into this row or column anyways, and second of all, S something LEE. As a matter of fact, I don't know why I have an E there. Can't think of it. Oh, right.
Leftover from the beginning.
Yeah, because this one does also have an E, actually. So, okay, this column has one. This row has one. Okay, so actually there was no need for having either. That is good because I couldn't come up with anything that works. But also it's bad because now every column or row that we haven't solved yet needs at least 2 more letters. Which is to say the last column and the second to last row, also known as the fourth row, need 2 letters, and the second and fourth column and the second and third row need 3. Wait, L something E.
There also aren't that many letters that can fit there.
Yeah, I was thinking that, right? Like, the second to so this letter is fairly restricted because of the L and the E, and arguably this one is too.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it has to either be P or a vowel, right?
Could be an H.
Oh yeah, shul, yeah. And that almost feels like it makes this one either a vowel, unless this one is a vowel, in which case it could also be double L. Except it can't be. So it could be T as well, I guess. Like, well, it can't be. Okay, so no, I think it almost would have to be another vowel, right? So you're looking at like shli, splee, splee word. Oh no, like no P's at all. Never mind. Shli, Sally, silly, sill. Wait, how do you spell sill? Like, as in like windowsill? Is it just SILL?
Yes, I think.
Oh wait, actually, forget it. It doesn't matter.
But I don't think it's.
There can't be an L or T here, so it doesn't even matter. Like the.
Yeah.
So this one almost has to be a vowel, as I said. So we almost are looking for something that is like. It's like Sally. Okay. Okay, wait. It has to. No, the L has to go there. We actually know that for a fact. Because in the row, I was just thinking, like, if maybe utile is in fact wrong, because, it's not exactly a word that I know definitively, but there has to be an L in the row, and it can't be in this column, and obviously this is where the hint is, so it has to actually be there.
Yeah.
And it's one of two places that the T can go, and this is effectively one of two places that the U can go. So, no, util looks good. I almost wish I could just test if util is correct before we have to do anything else, but we can't, so. Or crust, for that matter. Sealy. Pertaining to fairies. In Irish mythology, Sealy. Seele. I think that works. I think it might be. I'm not 100% sure if it's spelled that way, but. Oh, no, I think it's Seele, right? Not Sellee. Huh.
Like, the final E trips me up so much.
I know. It almost feels like it has to be double E like I previously had entered, right? Not that there's no reason from where the hints point, but because of just what we can put between an L and an E realistically, it almost feels like, I mean, especially at the word end, right? Like, obviously, like, words like alter, like, not that there could be a T there, but like, you know, like, there are ways to do that, but especially at the end of the word, it feels like it has to be a vowel, and then we're looking at A or E, basically, maybe I, but all of them basically make it Lee at the end of a word, like lay, Lee, something like very similar to that. It could be you. Could be.
Yeah, I just thought of that as well.
Could be you. Lou, like in Clue. Yeah, I mean, why not? Huh. And then we're once again questioning, like, what's that other letter? Because it would almost still have to be a vowel, right? Or an H, but like Schlu, haven't heard of it. Salut? It's not even spelled that way. Okay.
Not not really, no.
Salut. Silu. Oh, well, I guess it would be Selu, Silu, Silu. Silo is a word, but that's not it. Could it be like a skull? Like in... It's actually a thing. SCL, like in... Clue still sounds stupid. Well, ski has a K, but that's also a very weird word in general. Sky has a K too, though. Skull, skly, sklu, sklay, sklee.
Salve?
Salve, yeah. SALVE. Oh, how about solve as well? Just as a possible alternate solution.
Yeah.
Self is spelled differently. I was just gonna suggest that as well, but like, you know, salve or solve. Actually, I'm gonna take the A away again because it could be solve. But the V actually is the only thing we found so far that works.
It could not, because no U.
Oh, no O's at all. Right, sorry. Never mind. Okay, self. Like it. I literally just want to get the A out so that we wouldn't get confused, but given that that's... I never had LVE on my radar. I mean, obviously, you're right. Like, valve, salve,
yeah,
solve.
It just brute forced it. Like, it was quite something.
Okay.
I
don't know, renal, which I believe is pertaining to the kidneys. God, I
think we might have even had that at some point. Like,
I was thinking that, but I wasn't gonna say it because like I was gonna feel stupid if it was untrue. Not that anybody will fact check me, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it could also be regal, as in, you know, like very formal.
Yeah. other word again?
Sorry, what did you say?
What was the other word again?
Renal?
Said regal and renal. Renal.
I mean, it's either way. I'm coming up with E as a second letter. I was trying to figure out if that like A or something would also be possible, but I'm currently coming up with E as a second letter. Renal, regal. Oh, rival also works. In case we want another V. I mean, AVI is like not necessarily my preferred start over ANI, which AGI, which I guess none of those are great, I guess.
Yeah.
Huh. Ravel? Like unravel? Just without the un? Is that a... I don't know if that's a word. I mean, presumably if something if you can unravel something, you can also ravel it, right? I don't know.
But that's spelled differently, though.
Is it?
It's spelled with an E. Or we have an A right now. Yeah.
You are right. Like when you start doing this for a while, at some point your brain just gets mushy. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. Wouldn't trying to guess the fourth column probably be easier than the second one? Because we do have like a sort of rare letter in there.
No, I mean, I guess, yeah.
With almost the same restrictions.
Solve. Oh, no, wait, it can't be now. Alright, solve, and again, yeah, it's the exact same thing, except that we can't have an L in there, so it's even worse. Slave. Oh, no, still can't have an L in there. God damn it. Stave. Like to stave off something.
Can't have a T in there.
Damn it, you won't let me have any fun. Skeeve. No, wait, it doesn't work. Scave. Scave a word? Like you're like in scavenger, just without the injure? Like a
save? I don't know.
Like a snive? You know, like snive, like snivel, but without the L. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what like can come after S, right? And then also, this one almost feels like it has to be. Well, I mean, it can't be an E. It seems odd if it was an I because of double I in the row. So it almost feels like it has to be an A, right? And this is a U.
Maybe.
Wait, you've? No, not no you'ves, right? Suave? Huh. How about suave?
That works.
Because I was just thinking, okay, so first of all, I still like this being an A no matter what, right? Because the only ones I've come up with that work are like slave, stave, you know, all the ones that don't actually work. And then scave, which sounds almost plausible, but suave also works and has an A there.
Oh, shave would work.
Shave would also work.
Would also be a bit
better because common. Of the TH.
I don't know how it would work for the row, but
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I was thinking like TU is a bit odd, maybe. I mean, but TH works better, I think, because then now it's like lathe or something. Lathe is the only one I could come up with like on the spot, but that would mean that it would be an A there, which is not what I wanted. I wanted an E there. Left, leaf, or lithe. Right, that's a word, isn't it? And then this one is rival. And this one is avian. And then Tenet, like the movie.
Hey, we solved the game.
I still don't know if Tenet is actually like a noun, or I'm assuming it's a noun. But like, I don't know if it's a word. But like,
I think it is.
The rest of it seems fairly plausible. Do we just want to like go column by column, see if we can figure it out, if this works rather?
Yeah, sure.
Rival.
Let's go for it.
It's correct. I said it earlier on, but then utile. Okay, that's one of the more suspect ones in my opinion. It's correct. Shave. Okay, that one's pretty straightforward again. And then tenet, which is in fact correct. Hey!
Solve the game. Let's go.
Took us long enough. Okay, I think it's Googling time, right? Like, you have to like get some definitions in. Let me define tenet. I think I have to put define there because otherwise
a doctrine, principle, or position held as part of a philosophy, religion, or field of endeavor.
Any opinion, principle, dogma, or doctrine which a person, school, or sect holds or maintains is true. Dogma, okay, it just means dogma. Dogma. Which, I mean, wait, I've heard people say tenant, basically. But I thought there was an extra N in there. Like, you know, it's a religious tenant.
No.
Is it?
Nope.
Same as tenant. It's literally tenant also. Tenant and tenant is the same thing. Great. Good. Love to hear that.
I've never seen tenant spell that way.
I always thought it was that way. I feel like people say it that way, but then again, that does seem to be rarer because it just says same as tenant, so I guess I always misheard that. Okay, utile, I'm assuming I know what that means, but let's just go with it anyways. Useful. Profitable, useful. Yeah, that's what I said, right? That's exactly what I said. Okay, so let's see. What did we have? Class, I know. Rival, I know. Shave, I know. Trust me. Crust, I know. Live. I feel like I've heard live, but I wouldn't be able to define it, so I'm going to look it up. Readily bent, supple, marked by effortless grace. Avian means bird-like. Salve is like a thing you can smear on yourself, and sleet is like a mix of rain and hail. Okay, cool. Got it. This one was difficult. Because, honestly, tenant, I guess it's a word that I know. I guess. I just always thought it was tenant, okay? Like, you know. And then utile is like, I knew the word group, right? Like, I obviously knew utility is a word that I think we all know. But utile specifically, I hadn't heard like quite as that. Lithe, again, I knew it was a word. I mean, I said it pretty much as soon as the TH was there. And I knew that had to be an I or an E. But, I
mean, probably same word group as lightly or light.
Oh, maybe. Wait, no, that's GH, though. LIGHT.
Oh, true. Never mind.
So probably not. But still, right? Like, it's a word that like, lithe, I've heard before. Like, I knew that was a word. It's not one that I would have known well enough to, like, define or use. But, you know. And to be fair, like, self is not exactly... It feels very archaic, right? Like, I feel like it's not, like, that... I don't know, is it still in use?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like you would just say cream. And self feels very medieval to me, I don't know.
In the sense like rocket salve.
Huh?
Salvo. Like if...
Wait, but that's salvo, yeah. You know, I know what a salvo is, but that's different. Salve is like a cream.
Oh, okay. All right.
Salve is like an old term for a cream that I believe is combined with the German Salbe, which is still very common. But yeah, no, I mean it's Salve. It's a bit old. Honestly, I was low-key surprised that you knew that word, but I guess you don't.
Yeah. I don't actually. So yeah.
I love getting to a solution.
Just confused it with another word.
The worst part is I'm pretty sure it's not the first time this has happened. To at least one of us. I don't know if it was you last time, but it definitely has happened before. I'm pretty sure of it.
Yes. I can remember it happening multiple times.
Okay, how about second topic? We're gonna ask some good questions. First of all, when was the last time you were snooping and found something you wish you hadn't?
Never.
I was gonna say, like, I don't really snoop. I guess, like, I do sometimes research things. Like, I feel like sometimes you click on a link and you're like, I guess I didn't have to click on that. But, you know, like, I feel like it's nothing serious.
Yeah.
Which celebrity or band has the worst fan base? Okay, so the general phenomenon of toxic fan bases is really derived from the fact that any large enough fan base will have toxic fans, and oftentimes those will be the most vocal because that's just how toxicity works. So, like, probably a lot of the more famous ones. I mean, I feel like musicians are, like, more heavily associated with that. I know you sometimes hear things about, like, K-pop fans being, like, very extreme, but again, it's probably just a very vocal minority. But like, that's one that comes to mind. But again, I think it's a lot of the toxic fan base is just overblown in general because toxic people tend to be the ones that broadcast themselves, like, most extremely. And so that just... Plus, humans have a bias to where, like, negativity stands out more. Which, like, really works well in conjunction with one another.
Pro tip, just don't consume social media comments.
Oh, yeah, dude. Like, I cannot emphasize enough the benefits of not using Twitter. Like, I know my Twitter is linked in, like, every episode. Like, I don't use it.
Yep.
What are you interested in that most people aren't?
I
feel like... Are you taking the question of most people...
Actually, you have to think about that.
Right, because... I was saying, like... Because is there anything that, like, most people, as in, like, 4 billion people or more, are interested in? Right? Because the answer is no. Right? Like, it's just, you know, breathing, staying alive, like, eating and drinking. But, like, there's nothing that, like, most people are interested in, like, if you take it to that degree. Right? I guess the question is, what are, like, some more obscure interests that you have? I guess that's a better way of putting it, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's anything that, like, most people in the strictest sense would be interested in. I mean, computer science comes to mind. It's probably becoming more mainstream, but again, like, if we look at, like, most people, then obviously. Tabletop role-playing
It's
games.
still quite a large percentage of people. Like, one thing that I think not many people are interested in is one really old game that is kind of dying. It's called Ace of Spades.
Oh yeah.
I do play it semi-regularly. Kind of cool. I like it. It's Minecraft with guns, basically.
I feel like every game that has blocks is being described as Minecraft, but even if it doesn't have... I mean, I get it, you can break blocks, you can place blocks, and there's... But like...
It's actually like nothing like Minecraft.
I mean, to be fair,
except that it has blocks.
I mean, I'm pretty sure like that
and
is also...
And you can break them and place them.
First described to me, but yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah, you could go into like any... Like, the more specific you get, obviously. As I said, like tabletop role-playing games, you know, or Dungeons & Dragons for the uninitiated. I mean, literally Dungeons & Dragons
it still has like a really large fan base.
Yeah. And also, like... I mean, is anyone who... Like, there's... Like, you can get more philosophical with this and ask, like, is anyone that plays D&D actually interested in D&D, right? That's another... Maybe that's a stupid question, but like...
I don't think everyone is, but like the majority.
Because I feel like some people... I feel like some people that we play with, like, you know, build their characters once and like maybe look a bit into like how they want to build it. And then just show up to the table. I mean, you know, it's fine. I like it's not a criticism. But compared to like how I like read basically like all of the books, at least the ones that actually like have stats in them, I am interested in the lore, but I like, you know, the mechanics. Like, I'm keeping up with the Art of the Arcanas, you know, like, there's, like, I'm probably more into D&D than even most people that like D&D. Again, I'm not, like, you know, this is not like a gatekeeping thing or anything, I'm just, like, I think I genuinely do at least keep up with it very well. 1D&D, by the way, is looking very interesting. I don't know if you've looked into that at all. The new playtest for what is not the next edition of D&D, except that it totally is the next edition of D&D, except that it maybe isn't, so like it's 5.5 basically. They're playtesting it right now.
Oh, okay. I have not heard of it.
It is probably more like 5.5 than 6th edition, because a lot of the changes that they're making are more incremental, and like a lot of it does stay the same. And if you look at the difference between 3rd edition and 3.5, they did also do a lot of similar stuff back then, although I think they didn't modify the classes as much as they are now, but still is fairly tame. And given that they keep, I think, all the bound accuracy and most of the gameplay rules more or less the same, I think you could probably like build like a 5th edition character and build a 1D&D character. They'd be of fairly similar strength, except that the 1D&D characters get a first level feat, but also the first level feats are arguably a bit weaker than the other feats, so yeah, whatever. But yeah, no, that's not the question, but yeah, that is.
I guess another thing that is kind of similarly obscure is in-depth Beat Saber mechanics.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, again, right, like there are probably a decent amount of people that play Beat Saber, but like, how many people are actually like into Beat Saber, right? Rather than just...
Yeah, like to the point of like researching how mechanics work and how you can cheese them. I think only like a couple thousand people at best.
I mean, okay, let's put it that way. Like, where are you right now in the world rankings?
I've fallen off quite a lot since I haven't played like in a year. I'm currently like 1200 something, I think.
So I think that gives you like a good... I mean, I would argue that there's probably a strong correlation between where you're ranked and how interested you are in the game, just sort of in general. So like, I think that gives you a good idea of like how many people are like as interested in it as you are. I mean, obviously, like, I'm not saying that the person that's like 10 ranks below you is necessarily like filthy casual, right? I mean that in a non-judgmental way. But you know, yeah, I think that's fair enough.
Can't really think of anything else other than these two games.
The weird thing is, for me,
I'm interested in.
For me, I get interested in things for a while, and then eventually, like, I completely drop it almost, right? Like, I feel like I get like really deep into something until like I then completely stop again, right? And so there are probably a lot of things that at one point or another I was like really deep into, right? Like Okay, I mean, I used to watch football, but that's a very mainstream thing, and I probably never got as deep into it as some other people, although, I did play fantasy football for like 1.5 seasons. So, I get decently into it. I watched, for a while there, I watched like every wrestling promotion out there, basically. That's an exaggeration, but I was keeping up with 3 or 4 promotions at once, which is like a lot. And also, the main reason why I stopped doing this is because it's a lot in terms of content amount, right? I used to be really into Hearthstone. I started playing again recently, so content coming soon. But but again, right? It's like, I don't know. Let's do one more and then call it quits. If you were given a PhD degree but had no more knowledge of the subject of the degree besides what you have now, what degree would you want to be given? As effectively, if you could be given a PhD without like anything else, right? It's not magical. It's some university just gives you a PhD. Just without you having to put the work in. You just get it.
Like, does it have to be constrained to like actual PhD subjects?
I mean, I think it's probably the most reasonable. I mean, what do you have in mind?
I don't know, like procrastination. Kind of good at that.
Okay, yeah, I mean, no, I think there is a genuine thing though, right? Like, I wonder, I almost want to say something like economics, right? Because statistically speaking, like some of the best doctors in the world perform about as well as monkeys throwing darts at a dartboard, right? So
yeah.
So it's like, I feel like that's one of those areas where just having the PhD and then just going to something like day trading, you probably don't do much worse than people that actually did the studies. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not saying you don't learn anything useful in an economics degree, but like, depending on what exactly you do with that degree, you might as well not have it. I'm sure if you like do some actual like, I don't know, like a CFO function or something, like,
market
I'm
analysis,
sure it's more useful. But if you again like something like
stuff like that,
like actually like speculative trading stuff, I don't think an actual economics degree is that useful. I think something like that, right? Where I don't know, philosophy, right? Like, sure, I can't cite all the same philosophers that someone with a real philosophy degree can, but I can philosophize, right? Like, because philosophy is just pulling shit out of your ass and making it sound plausible. I mean, I'm sure there's more to it, but again, I think it's just something where one or more of the things you can do with that PhD, just like job-wise, does not require the actual knowledge of the PhD, right? So if I got a PhD in, I mean, I guess computer science would still kind of work because like I still at least am somewhat reasonably knowledgeable in it. But right, if I get a PhD in theoretical physics, then it's not like a university is going to hire me as a physics professor, right? Because I don't actually know anything to teach. And I mean, obviously, if you want to go into like teaching, like that doesn't work for any subject. But it's like, what else are you going to do with it, right? If you get something more practical, like electrical engineering or something, like you can get an engineering job. But again, you have to actually know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think if you get something like economy or philosophy, where like the things you can do with a degree are so broad that some areas where they would want you to have a, maybe not necessarily a PhD, but like at least like a master's degree or something in that subject, but you don't really need it from any sort of practical standpoint. So I think this is one of those things. And again, economics and philosophy come to mind. I'm sure there are other areas where you could do that as well, where, and again, I'm not saying that those degrees are useless. I'm just saying like some of the things you can do with those degrees don't really make any use of the actual stuff you learn for that degree. And so, obviously, also, it just looks good on resume in general, right? So if you have, for example, like having a PhD in economics, I think economics is probably what I would go with. It probably looks good on like any position you apply to, almost, right? Like it's just like it like makes you look smart, and like, oh, that guy's not going to make any dumb business decisions, even if you don't really have a lot to do with the business side of it. So it's like, it's probably always looks at least somewhat good. I mean, obviously, in that sense, you could also just get like quantum physics or something, because that's like one of those like stereotypical, like really smart things to know about. And then, you apply to be a programmer or something, and they're like, oh, he has I don't know why you would apply here, but I guess you're really smart, so, and then that's all of it. But
Yeah.
If you want to go do something that doesn't have anything to do with the PhD, you just pick whichever one sounds the smartest, probably. If you want to do something that has to do with the field, but doesn't necessarily require the knowledge, you pick whichever one is relevant, right? So, again, I think economics is probably one that looks good for like most positions that you apply to. And you can also, like, again, try to like apply to a bank as a day trader or something and just say, okay.
Yep.
Oh, and then because I have a computer science background, I can write a script that actually automates the trading. It just randomly picks a stock, buys it, and then if it's up, it sells it. You know, it probably works just as well as the people that do all the market analysis and don't have to do any actual work.
I mean, that's like how they actually simulate it. They don't actually give darts to monkeys. They just pick random stocks.
Yeah. I know, right? But like, I feel like if you
sell them all after like 5 years or something.
Yeah, but I feel like I would try to make it a little bit smarter. I mean, obviously, I know the more smarter you try to get, the worse it actually ends up becoming. But I feel like if you like do something simple where it's like, oh yeah, I'm only selling the stocks if they're up or something, right? And then you occasionally check, and then profit. I don't know. I'm sure there are like some complexities that I'm not aware of, but given how poorly actual like Wall Street people compare to random chance, I'm sure that economics degree would come to a lot of use there.
Yeah.
Oh god, I feel like you almost should try that. Obviously not with a degree because we're not getting it, but just like trying to apply to like one of those firms and like convince them that you like. I don't know how you would do the convincing part unless I guess you have some of your own money and like showcase that it works. But like convince them that you like actually like have some like secret talent at like stocks or whatever. But your secret is just that you pick randomly, and so you don't because some of the benefits of like picking randomly is just like you don't buy into hype and stuff like that, right? So you can't be as manipulated as easily, and so you might actually perform fairly well, and just do that, and then at some point when they're like, hey, so what is your secret? And you're about to retire, and they're like, what's the secret? And you're like, oh yeah, I guessed. Yeah, I just roll the dice. Like, I don't know. There's no method to the madness.
Yep. The stock market is basically random. Anyway.
I wonder if there's
no point in guessing.
I wonder what the relevant PhD would be, but you know how a lot of like celebrities and generally like rich people oftentimes have like, I was gonna say spiritual advisors, like those sort of like life coaches and like that sort of like bullshit guru type people. Yes. I wonder if there's any qualifications for that, because that's also one of those things that you could probably get into very easily, say some like basic meaningless shit, and get a lot of money for doing virtually nothing.
I don't know. The closest would be like education.
Yeah, I got yeah. Psychology. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, to be fair, you could probably just like do an actual like life coach, certificate, because I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of places where you can get those. Just again, right? Like, it doesn't matter that the credentials are actually good. It just matters that you have something to show, and then just tell them some actual common sense things, and then a bunch of like high concept nonsense that doesn't actually do anything, but where it's like, oh, you gotta realign your chakras to the right, like, I don't know.
I wake up every day at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I know they're willing to that, huh?
Jog for 5 hours.
No, but like some of the like random spiritual Eastern mysticism stuff, which for some reason always works for people, and then a little bit of like genuine like just like like try not to sweat things that you can't control. Like some of the like very common sense things. I feel like I could do that, but then again, I'm not a people person, so. I still like the idea of just sitting like in an office at a bank, just like having your computer algorithm select random stocks and just buying and selling them. And just that.
Mm-hmm. Or just manually rolling the dice. That also be.
There's probably too many
style points for that.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, but then, like, how many stocks are in consideration, right? Like, if we're just buying the big ones, then yeah, sure. But otherwise, I mean, there are like 400-sided dice, I know, but
and just like get a list of all of them, and you can just repeatedly like close in on them.
Yeah. I mean, you could always
like
just
you could
roll d10s,
roll like it, yeah,
and just
and d10s for the number of digits, yeah. That worked.
Anyways, what is your song of the week?
Right, my song of the week is Duvet, I think is how it's pronounced, by Boa.
And you don't seem to understand. A shame you seemed an honest man. And all the fears you hold so dear will turn to whisper in your ear.
Well, I would have said duvet, but then again, I believe generally English speakers would say something like duvet or something. It's French. I believe it means couch. But I think in other languages it refers to a specific. Wait, no, is duvet the couch? No, what am I thinking of? It's. No, duvet is. Oh no, duvet is the right. Yeah, no, sorry. It's a comforter. It's a. I for some reason I get that confused. There's another word that I'm thinking of that is a type of couch that is in French just a couch, but duvet is a duvet, usually called a comforter or quilt in US English, and a doona in Australian English is a type of bedding consisting of a soft flat bag filled with either down or feathers, wool, cotton, silk, or it's like a thing to cover yourself with in bed, right? Like one of those. I'm pretty sure the worst part about this is I'm pretty sure we've had in a recent episode where I was like, oh, I don't know this word, and then Swag was like, oh, it's a duvet. Oh, duvet, or whatever, right? Like, And I guess another name, well, I mean, it could be boa, like the, boa, like the snake. I don't know.
Yeah, but like, I don't know how to like actually read out the O thingy with the triangle on top.
Here's the thing, right? I don't know what language this is, right? So if it's boa, then I don't know. But in French, okay, so in French, the circumflex doesn't affect the pronunciation at all.
Oh.
Well, okay, to be fair,
that's nice.
that is at least in like regular French, because I know the Québécois, for some reason, okay, I'm not gonna, like when they have an A with a circumflex on it, they pronounce it like au. So they don't say calice, they say caulis. So I don't know what that's about, but like that's just Quebec, but like sort of regular French speakers, that doesn't affect the pronunciation at all. Then again, other languages I believe do use it to affect the pronunciation. So like it just depends on what language it is.
Yeah, apparently it's an English band from London. So I don't know.
Well, I'm pretty sure that accent doesn't exist in English, so I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to be fancy.
Probably.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is definitely one of the songs of all time, as they say.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't
Most
have a strong
definitely.
opinion on it. I don't have a strong opinion on this one. Well, anyways, my song of the week is "Take It to the Limit" by a band called Eagles. It feels weird to say by Eagles, but technically that's what they're called. They're not called the Eagles, they're just called Eagles.
Certainly is a song. Also, like how like the song of the previous week just flashed in there for.
Did it?
Like a split frame. I think it did.
I didn't notice
that. It looked that way to me.
I don't even remember what my song was last week, but okay.
Cyber Christ.
Oh yeah.
Had a white cover.
Okay, sure. I mean, I guess that should happen, but okay. Oh, I'm pretty sure if that is a problem that remains, I know how to fix it, probably.
It might have just cached it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably a caching thing, so most likely just restarting the program should fix it. But
probably, yeah.
I don't think that has ever happened before, but then again, maybe we just didn't have that starker contrast either.
Maybe.
Anyways,
I don't know.
Not a big deal.
That doesn't really matter.
So yeah, if we don't have anything else to say about that, then I guess that brings this episode of the Trash Talk Podcast to a close. Like the video if you enjoyed it, leave a comment if you have something to say, subscribe if you want to see more of this, join the Discord server if you want to do that, and Sergej.
That's it.
That's it.